The Toronto Blue Jays are making moves and following what was one of the crazier regular season games you'll ever see yesterday. The Jays have made an interesting move that we're going to go over, but not only that, we have multiple big Jays updates as reinforcements are on the horizon ahead of a crucial mini homestand against a very good Chicago Cubs team. We also have a few other things to go over today, folks. Before you do it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Your guys' support has been truly unbelievable. You've been an absolute beast with the support, so make sure to continue hitting that subscribe button if you're enjoying, folks. A lot to go over today, and even at the end, we have some comments from the players following yesterday's crazy game from Mason Fluharty. We also have some comments from him. But folks, I want to dive into a few different things. Now, obviously, yesterday, unbelievable game. Today is an off day for the Jays, a much needed off day, and they're going to have a couple of those, coming up and over the past week or so because of the fact that, over the next week or so because of the fact that they've been playing a lot earlier this year. But I want to focus on, in the off day, some big updates, but I want to first start with a move that has gone completely under the radar, and it's not to do with the big league club, but it has to do with the prospect, and we'll briefly cover it. I'll have another full video covering prospects, either later on in this month or something, maybe towards the, the end of the season, But this one is very interesting. Silvano Hechavarria has been promoted to Vancouver High A per sources. If you're unfamiliar with this guy, I know it's we're taking a step back for a second before we get into the actual Toronto Blue Jays updates. He has been absolutely dominant, and this is a prospect that is rising, and he is rising fast. You can see this here in Dunedin A-ball. He had a 1.81 ERA in 10 games through 6 starts. He has now been promoted, and it's relevant because the Jays obviously have a lot of starting pitching depth on the big league club into the prospect pool a little bit, and they got rid of a lot of it, but they still have tons of guys. Obviously, they traded away some interesting ones, Cal Steven, things like that. You still have Johnny King, Trey Savage, Ricky Tiedemann, all these different guys. But another guy who's kind of soaring up the radar is Silvano Hechavarria. So keep an eye out on him as he's been promoted to High A now. They have an abundance of players they can use both going forward and as well in the offseason to facilitate trade. So a pretty big promotion there. It's a prospect no one's really talking about, sneaking under the radar. So I wanted to kind of just give you guys, take a step back a little bit, talk about a little bit of prospect news on this off day. But let's dive into some of the big stuff now. Let me know down below if you're familiar with Silvano Hechavarria and, what your kind of thoughts are on him. Dominant stuff, and I'm really excited to see. He's 22, so he's not super young. Let's dive into some other things now. Boy, oh boy, is it going to be a crazy day today into tomorrow surrounding reinforcements coming. Now, let's start with a little bit of Shane Bieber news. Now, this came out, I believe it was the day before yesterday, was later in the night. It kind of got lost. And this is from John Schneider. And Schneider also dropped an article very recently highlighting when they're expecting Shane Bieber to return to the club. And I've briefly covered it over the past few days, but this is by far the biggest development in the situation. So Schneider said he watched Shane Bieber's outing and said the right-hander looked good between location and stuff. And of course, he started the day before yesterday, right? And he was impressed with his changeup, and he said at this point, what's most important is what are your pitchers doing and how are you feeling during and after your outings, and all the reports have been really good. But this is the new news here. Bieber is heading back to Toronto yesterday, and the Blue Jays will finalize the next steps with him in the coming days. Right now, it's probably one or more rehab outings, aiming for 85 pitches. And as for what happens next, they haven't decided on the 6-man rotation, but his next start is confirmed to have 85 pitches and probably one more. We could see Shane Bieber, like I mentioned the other day, towards the end of August. And we got some comments from John Schneider about it. And I covered this, feel free to check my video out. I believe it was from yesterday morning, not the post-game video yesterday, but the one before, where I dove into it even more in depth. But Shane Bieber, he is returning soon, and reinforcements are on the way, and his next start's going to have 85 pitches. But speaking of reinforcements here, Shai Davidi dropped an article that's summarized here surrounding a bunch of different players. But let's start with Andres Jimenez. So you can see this here. How to slot Bieber isn't only the major question looming the Jays. Perhaps as soon as Tuesday versus the Cubs, Andres Jimenez is going to be making his return. And of course, John Schneider was asked about one uncomfortable conversation about who's going to be sent down, all these different things. You watch what guys are doing, you look at how they're working, their adjustments, all these different things. But folks, this big move is going to be made probably tonight into tomorrow. Now, it's probably not going to actually get finalized till tomorrow, but all signs point to, and it was briefly mentioned yesterday, and it's been thrown out there, Andres Jimenez returning against the Cubs on Tuesday. That is what seems to be happening. He'll slide right in against a lot of the righties, and obviously Clement, who is hitting 400 over his last 10 games or something crazy, will probably shift back to more of a platoon role. And it's very good news. I'm excited to see Jimenez back, the best defender in baseball at second base. Was hitting 300, before he left and before he got hurt. He was finally getting his, feet down under him. And obviously we've seen him be able to hit for power at the start of the season. Was the Jays, feels like years ago, was the Jays cleanup hitter for a while. And At the end of the day, this is massive, right? Getting Jimenez back, yes, he's not going to change the game offensively, but I remember sitting back. I was actually at the stadium opening day when Andres Jimenez hit that opening series where he hit a home run or two against the Orioles. He has potential to be a fine bat. Like, he's not going to hit home runs very much, but he's an elite defender, and just having the left-handedness there is going to be massive. He's going to be coming back Tuesday. All signs point to that, which means that big, confusing move is going to have to be made soon. Low Profito, Davis Schneider, maybe DFA of Miles Straw. I doubt that happens. It's one of those, and, especially after Mason Fluharty's stint yesterday, I don't think they're going to send him down. So that's going to be, like John Schneider said, one uncomfortable conversation. Let me know down below, once again, who you think they're going to be moving off of. But speaking of moving off of, or moving on to, rather, is George Springer. So he still has yet to be cleared. And, of course, this article talked about the, Glasnow versus Eric Lauer, all these different things. It says you don't want to just say, okay, George is out. This is kind of what we are. We know that we're really deep, and we've got a lot of guys that can do a lot of things. But having his presence at the top of the order definitely changes the dynamic of our lineup just based on his offensive profile. Hopefully he's back soon. You never really know what he's dealing with. He still hasn't been cleared for, as of yesterday. Still, obviously, it's early morning now. Still hasn't been cleared as of yesterday by the MLB, and that's what we're waiting on. The MLB has yet to clear him for concussion protocols, which means clearly he's dealing with something, whether that's, brain fog, memory, whatever it ends up being, probably just, yes, I'm assuming he's just their advanced test. They probably have machines, all these different things. Let me know down below if you know for sure. They don't mess around with concussions anymore. With CTE and everything that's been happening in wrestling and sports in general, they do not mess around. No league should, and is properly, rightfully so. As much as we want George Springer back, his health is the number one concern. His, obviously, health as a human being beyond just the baseball player, George Springer, for him and his family is the number one priority, first and foremost, and all the way through. Hopefully he's back in the next week or two. It's getting scary now because you're kind of at a point where I don't know how good he's going to be when he comes back. He was the hottest of his, past handful of seasons, arguably the hottest in his Jays career. And maybe aside from his first year or second year, he is now at a point where he hasn't seen a baseball in 2 weeks, thrown at him. He's going to have to get back into it, and hopefully he can slide right back in and be as good as he was. And hopefully it was an adjustment thing rather than a feel thing towards his success. But boy, oh boy, is it devastating. And we think back to 2021 when he was really, really good and then got hurt and wasn't quite the same player. Hopefully that's not the case for, of course, George Springer. But he's going to be, again, we'll probably get an update today or tomorrow at some point. Definitely tomorrow before the Cubs series at home. So stay tuned for a full video on that. But it's interesting. Just a ton of news dropped, yesterday, the day before, kind of just, giving all to you guys now because there has been a lot that happened, especially in between games. But let me know down below what your thoughts are on all of this. A few other things. I want to dive into some comments that were dropped from a bunch of different people, including Mason Fluharty. He said, coming in against Shohei, this is about yesterday's game, of course. I was super excited, super pumped, honestly blacked out, have no idea what was happening out there, but just trusted my pitches, attacking guys, and that's all you can do in that situation. Throw strikes and execute pitches. Glad you won. He's an absolute beast. He's saying as he blacked out. And you can see there in the third paragraph, John Schneider and kind of his thoughts behind it. I was talking to a few guys even on the first night here. It's fun. This is what you play for. Obviously, talking about putting yourselves in those moments. I don't think John Schneider thought Mason Fluharty was going to get out of that. I don't think anybody thought Mason Fluharty was going to get out of that. For him to, there's a crazy stat, like for him to, he's one of the first since 2002, I think, to come in and get a save against two, with bases loaded, one out against two MVP winners. So, I mean, it's absurd. A huge win for the Jays. And at the end of the day, despite the crazy weekend, they started the weekend 4 games in first place AL East. They finished the weekend 4 games ahead in the AL East against the Dodgers. You can see here, honestly, it's a great outcome. Losing a series on the road to the Dodgers isn't a crazy result, and they didn't lose a game of their lead over Boston, and 3 games came off of the schedule. That's a W. The team is rolling. We're rolling, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm excited to see Shane Bieber return. I'm excited to see a lot of things happen, and also keep an eye on this prospect. I want to give you guys a little tidbit there. But folks, let me know down below what your thoughts are. What a day. A great off day before a big series. It does not get easier. You're facing Cubs pitchers, a bit easier on the pitching matchup there. Then you're going up against the Rangers with Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom. It's going to be crazy. You guys are beasts. See you guys later. Cheers.